Why did Kyubey allow Homura's wish? Is a question I asked myself many times, especially considering that Homura's wish essentially involves time travel. From a logical standpoint, her karmic potential should have been incredibly high to allow this wish to happen. But apparently, time travel is to anyone accessible who is fatherless, motherless, spent most of her time in the hospital and was a VIP guest, has no friends, has no bitches, and has no social standing at all. It was quite frankly insignificant in the greater scheme of the original timeline. And roasting Homura? Check. But after watching Scene 0 and researching the requirements for becoming a magical girl, which, by the way, I made a video about it, please check this first out, I think I finally figured out why Kyubey approved her wish. To understand, we need to first take a look at the canon first timeline, specifically from the PSP game Madoka Magica PlayStation Portable version, and to be more specific, we need to take a look at the Mami route, which is called If Only You Were By My Side. This is also the first timeline where Glass Homura is first introduced. The story is penned by the Butcher, aka Gen Obishi, who wrote himself the Madoka Magica story, and he gives us a version of Mami that is far more complex before her writing got nerfed. So let's begin. Homura's life didn't have a real meaning until she met Madoka. Before that, she was a VIP guest at the hospital, limited by her heart condition, social isolation, and without any prospect for becoming something important. No chance of becoming a CEO, a famous artist, or a messiah. Yet somehow, despite her circumstances, she still had enough potential to be granted a wish. Throughout, not enough to make her especially powerful, since in the upcoming timeline she always relied on her time-stopping ability and her firearms. But Kyubey didn't care about any of that. What he did care, however, was the wish that Homura would make. But like I mentioned before, Homura's life didn't have a real meaning until she met Madoka. Her life therefore only started in her eyes when she met Madoka, and her being beside Madoka was a wish come true. So Homura didn't have a wish to become a magical girl. But for Kyubey, this was only a matter of time, and even without having made a wish, he noticed how important Homura was, not only for Madoka, but also for the mental breakdown of Mami Tomoe. You see, Kyubey noticed something that every teenage girl noticed when they watched the Hunger Games or the Diversions: a bloody love triangle. But this one was even more emotional charged, this one being a lesbian love triangle. Yes, I said, a full-blown love triangle between Mami, Madoka, and Homura. Just replace friends with girlfriend and you got yourself a setup even more tragic than Subaru's third day of high school ReZero, when their voice cracked and everyone noticed that they were not in fact a girl but a boy. Man, poor girl. And let's be real, love triangles are emotional landmines for both those in them and those watching them. Kyubey recognized Homura's deep emotional attachment to Madoka and saw the potential for generating vast amount of energy. And at the same time, he also saw how important Madoka was for Mami Tomoe, who in the first timeline deeply cared for or possibly even loved Madoka, since in her eyes Madoka was the perfect girl and perfect magical girl. A sweet girl who can't do anything wrong, a sweet girl who fights for justice, all the things she wishes she were herself. When Homura entered the scene, Mami Tomoe became extremely jealous of Homura's growing closeness to Madoka, and believing that she is not worth it to be by Madoka's side, and her own self-hate and belief that she is not worthy to be the special person in Madoka's life, which she literally says in the PSP game herself, Mami Tomoe's soul gem even started to get taunted by just noticing how close these two were, mimicking Sayaka's tarnishing of her soul gem in the anime. So now I'm probably known as the biggest Mami Tomoe glazer, and believe me, the analysis video on her will come out at that before Homura, since she got way too many and Mami Tomoe doesn't have a single one. But believe me, this short analysis is important to answer all the questions, since like I noticed how important Madoka was to Mami, Kyubey also notices and played on Mami's insecurity to ensure she would turn into a witch, which is the reason to ensure Homura would always stay near Madoka, while Mami saw how close these two slowly got together. The best case scenario for Kyubey would be if Homura would make a wish, and if Homura would become a magical girl, she would continue staying at Madoka's side. This of course will hurt Mami even more, and she would start isolating herself even more, until her emotion finally overflows and she will finally turn into a witch. The only thing that now needs to happen is for Homura to form a wish towards Kyubey and therefore become officially a magical girl. And when I finally see how Mami Tomoe turns into a witch, there will be extremely shocked and also feel like like they are responsible for this, and so their emotional distress will increase, and slowly but surely they will possibly, in Kyubey's eyes, become witches as well. So in the end, Kyubey believes that he would create 3 extremely powerful magical girls and therefore 3 extremely powerful witches by just letting this love triangle continue. And this plan does indeed work in some timelines, where Mami did turn into a witch, since Kyubey did convince her that Madoka only stayed by her side because of how weak she was and only stayed at her side out of gratitude and nothing more. While in another timeline, Madoka did manage to stop Mami's witch form, but in others where she died to Mami's witch form, and her soul was trapped in Mami's tea house. And also there exists another timeline where both of them reconciled and got back together and fought against Walpurgisnacht. One timeline they even managed to beat Walpurgisnacht, but in the end Mami did need to sacrifice her life to protect Madoka, and Madoka died from her wounds. And in the end, Homura made a wish after her world, this being Madoka, died right in front of her. This being her wish to redo the same month over and over again and be Madoka's protector. This is a wish Kyubey didn't plan for, but he was quite happy to oblige. Kyubey does grant Homura this wish, but not out of kindness. He saw it as a profitable investment, just like he saw Homura's involvement with Madoka and Mami as a probable investment into creating 3 witches. But this wish of wanting to turn back time seems to be even more positively investful, since every resets and every time she jumps through timeline to timeline would mean more emotional build-up and more karmic potential for Madoka, and ultimately more energy for the incubators and their respective universes. Best case scenario, Madoka becomes the most powerful magical girl and therefore the most powerful witch in all of existence. Worst case scenario, Homura falls to despair and becomes a witch. Either way, the incubator would benefit either way and would gain enough energy for their respected universes. This was even confirmed in Scene 0 later on from another Kyubey from another timeline, who found the first timeline Kyubey to be extremely intelligent for doing something like that. So in summary, Homura had low potential but high emotional value. She wasn't destined for greatness, she was a low risk, high reward gamble. What Kyubey didn't foresee was how far Homura would go. Her loyalty and love to Madoka became obsession. Her love evolved into deifying Madoka, and eventually she became one of the few anime characters to generally deify a teenage girl. Right up there with Rodeo's Grey Rat. Sorry, I just needed to do that joke. Oh, how I love to see Kyubey's reaction now. The first timeline Kyubey's reaction now of how far this teenage girl from a Catholic school would go for a pink-haired girl. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video because I loved making this video. And if you want more videos, please like and subscribe to my channel. But for now, I wish you all a bloody good day. Goodbye.